Alexander and I have shared a bond since our teenage years. For nearly 3 decades, he has stood by my side as my closest companion. We've navigated the tumultuous waters of high school heartbreaks, faced the crushing weight of disastrous job interviews, celebrated marriages that blossomed and withered, and witnessed the gradual, unrelenting shift of life's priorities. When she extended the invitation to her family's lake house for the weekend, it felt like just another ordinary moment. Little did I know, it would soon unravel into something far beyond the mundane. 2 old friends, their laughter echoing through the years, reconnecting in a moment that felt both familiar and electric. What I never anticipated, what I could never have foreseen, was the intensity of Beatrice's gaze that evening as it locked onto mine. It had been years since I last laid eyes on Beatrice. In the days of our youth, he was the captivating younger brother, his mischievous grin lighting up the room and his cocky attitude drawing everyone in. Forever the mischievous spirit, the one who orchestrated pranks, snatched cookies from the tray, and charmed everything that crossed their path. He was 5 years younger than us, and at that time it loomed like an insurmountable chasm. We were women, and he remained just a boy. Yet time, as it often does, had sealed that canyon in the most unexpected of manners. The clock had already struck late that fateful Friday evening when I finally arrived. The sun dipped low on the horizon, its warm embrace lingering on the treetops as it bid them goodnight, stretching long, golden shadows that danced across the dock. The lake glimmered with a mesmerizing copper hue, its surface smooth and tranquil, reflecting the world above like a flawless mirror. Alexander burst through the door to welcome me, his arms flung wide, laughter spilling from his lips like a melody that filled the air. We embraced, a warm and intimate connection, as she guided me through the door. The air was thick with the scent of pine wood, weaving a tapestry of nostalgia that enveloped the space. It had been more than 10 years since I last set foot in that place. Yet a familiar warmth enveloped me, as if time had stood still. Soft throw blankets draped over the couch, their warmth inviting. Faded photographs capturing the laughter of summer barbecues and the carefree splashes of childhood swims. Each image a portal to sun-drenched memories. The familiar creak of the old screen door echoed through the stillness, a haunting reminder of the past. And then he emerged before my eyes. In the dim light of the kitchen, Beatrice carefully poured a glass of wine, the rich liquid swirling as it filled the crystal goblet, casting shadows that danced across the walls. He turned when he heard us, and for a moment the room felt charged with an electric tension, as if the very air was holding its breath, waiting for what would happen next. Motionless, he'd aged, yes, but with an elegance that captivated the eye. Salt and pepper hair now wove through his once jet-black curls, while his piercing hazel eyes, though softened, retained their fierce intensity. His face bore the kind of quiet ruggedness that evokes the timeless characters of old westerns. Resided within. Serious. Vivian, he asked, his voice resonating with a depth I hadn't recalled. A smile crept across my face as I shifted the weight of my overnight bag on my shoulder, anticipation bubbling within me. He let out a soft chuckle, his eyes sparkling with mischief as he approached. In an instant, he enveloped me in a brief yet comforting embrace, igniting a warmth that spread through me. And that was the moment I sensed it. It was more than just the embrace. His arms lingered, a heartbeat stretching into eternity, leaving an unspoken tension hanging in the air. A whisper of intrigue. A deliberate act. As the evening deepened, we gathered on the back deck. The 3 of us, our eyes drawn to the stars as they began to pierce the velvet expanse of the night sky. As Alexander disappeared into the house to fetch dessert, I found myself alone with Beatrice, the rhythmic chorus of crickets creating an eerie backdrop to our silence. "I always thought you were too cool for me," he said suddenly, his gaze fixed on the ground as if the weight of his words could pull him deeper into the earth. I spun around to face him, my heart racing with disbelief. "Once, you were just a child. Your skateboard captured your attention far more than any conversation ever could." He wore a sly grin, a hint of mischief dancing in his eyes, perhaps. "Yet, your presence lingered in my thought. You possessed a silent power that resonates deeply. I remember the way you fiercely defended Alexander during those heated battles with our parents. Fear was a distant memory for you." Silence enveloped me as I absorbed his words, allowing them to sink deep into my thoughts. "It was amusing," I finally declared. "I had always believed you were completely oblivious to my existence." He turned to face me then, and in that moment, under the gentle hum of a summer night, the stars twinkled like scattered diamonds upon the lake's surface. I witnessed it unfold before my eyes. That gaze, it lingered in the shadows, subtle yet undeniable. It lacked any hint of aggression. It was a moment suspended in time, a breath held in anticipation, as shadows danced around the flickering light. The air crackled with unspoken tension, each heartbeat echoing like a drum in the silence. The world outside faded away, leaving only the pulse of the unknown, drawing closer with every passing second. Unseal the mystery, exposed as if he could truly see me. Not as I once was, but as I had become. That look ignited a spark within me, awakening emotions I thought had long since faded. It's peculiar indeed. Years can pass in silence, a void where memories fade, yet suddenly, like a stone breaking the surface of still water, they return, sending ripples through your very existence. Silence enveloped us in the aftermath, words hanging heavy in the air, unspoken and unresolved. Alexander burst through the door, laughter spilling from his lips, tales swirling around him like a vibrant tapestry. But just as quickly, the moment slipped away into silence. Yet, throughout the night, I found myself stealing glances at Beatrice, his gaze lingering on me with an intensity that was more curious than unsettling, as if he were unearthing a long-lost treasure, something he never anticipated would resurface. The following day, we ventured along the water's edge, the air thick with anticipation and the promise of adventure. The air was alive, infused with the invigorating aroma of pine and the earthy essence of lakeweed. Alexander stepped forward to answer a phone call, leaving Beatrice and me lingering in his wake. "You still wear that necklace?" he said, his gaze fixed on the small silver charm that glinted just above my collarbone. A smile crept across my face as I gazed downward. "Indeed, it was a cherished gift from my late husband. I wear it always, never letting it leave my side." His gaze melted with warmth. "I can still picture the moment you received it. At the age of 16, everything felt alive with possibility. You arrived for dinner, and a radiant smile danced across your face, lighting up the room." "Those were the years that lingered in my mind," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. With a subtle nod, he acknowledged the unspoken weight of the moment. "Do you still sense that connection with him?" "There were moments," I confessed. "At times, it feels as though I am gradually uncovering the essence of my being, piece by piece, in the absence of him." Beatrice's gaze met mine, filled with a profound, unspoken understanding. that seemed to bridge the silence between us. Perhaps that is the truest act of sincerity one could ever undertake. We came to a halt, the world around us fading into silence. The breeze whispered through the branches overhead, while a bird darted gracefully among the trees, weaving a dance of life in the dappled sunlight. As I gazed into his eyes, I caught a glimpse of a softness, a quiet strength that anchored him in the moment. He was no longer the reckless boy I once knew. He had transformed into a man shaped by experience, bearing the heavy burdens of love and loss, each etched into his very being. In that very moment, a palpable change rippled through the air. His fingers brushed against my skin as he gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. His fingers grazed my cheek, and in that instant, my breath hitched. Not from surprise, but from the sudden awareness of how long it had been since anyone had dared to touch me in such a tender way. As if I truly mattered, it felt as though I had been truly noticed. I remained utterly still. He didn't either. The air crackled with unvoiced feelings, a moment suspended in time, until he abruptly stepped back, his throat clearing like a signal breaking the spell. "I'm sorry," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never intended to cross the line." Yet he had not. Absolutely not. I simply nodded, my voice lost in the weight of the moment. That night, I found myself isolated in my guest room, captivated by the shimmering moonlit lake that lay just beyond the window. My thoughts swirled like a tempest, brewing beneath the surface, haunting memories, deep-seated feelings, and questions that had lingered in the shadows of my mind, unasked for years. A shift was unfolding, an unforeseen twist that left me teetering on the edge of uncertainty, unsure of the path it would carve ahead. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, a spark of curiosity ignited within me, compelling me to uncover the truth. The morning sun crept through the delicate curtains of the guest room, spilling a soft golden light that danced across the wooden floorboards, awakening the space with a warm embrace. I lingered in bed, enveloped by the gentle whispers of distant birds and the subtle creaks of the house as it surrendered to the stillness of the morning. After years of relentless haste, a strange calm washed over me. For the first time, I felt no pressing need to begin the day. The lake house held an enchanting tranquility, a spell that seemed to stretch time itself, inviting all who entered to linger in its serene embrace. Perhaps it was the haunting calm of the water, or the comforting presence of those who understood my past, or perhaps it was the intensity of Beatrice's gaze that pierced through me once more. I was not merely conjuring it in my mind. As dawn broke, the three of us convened around the weathered farmhouse table, the air thick with anticipation. Alexander's laughter filled the air as he recounted amusing tales from the office, his cheer infectious. Yet, amidst the joviality, I felt the weight of Beatrice's gaze, lingering on me, pulling my attention like a magnet. It lingered in the air, a silent intensity, as if he were unraveling the threads of a deep mystery within himself. And I'll confess, I was caught in the same web. As Alexander ventured into town to gather groceries, she extended an invitation for me to join the journey. But I turned them down, expressing my desire for a moment by the water's edge. I craved solitude, a moment to gather my thoughts in the silence of my own mind. As I strolled toward the dock, a book clutched tightly in my hand. Its pages remained untouched, the words within waiting for a moment that never came. The gentle caress of water against the weathered wood, the haunting cry of a loon echoing in the distance, enveloped me in a tranquil reverie. Moments later, the sound of footsteps echoed ominously behind me. The air shifted. a familiar presence looming behind me. I didn't need to look back to confirm it was Beatrice. "May I take a seat beside you?" he inquired, his voice barely above a whisper. A smile crept across my face. "Absolutely not." He settled beside me, maintaining a distance that felt just right. Yet his proximity was palpable, wrapping me in the warmth of his presence. We lingered in a comfortable silence, one that wrapped around us like a warm blanket, fostering a sense of connection rather than discomfort. Then, his voice broke the silence. "I hope my words didn't cast a shadow over our encounter yesterday." My gaze locked onto him. "You really didn't." He exhaled sharply, as though he had been suspended in time, waiting for this very moment. "Excellent. Because I truly meant it." That sent a thrill racing through my chest. "What did you mean?" I inquired, even though the answer was already etched in my mind. That touch, that look, an electric connection that sent shivers down the spine, igniting a fire that could not be extinguished. A wave of memories washed over me, pulling me back to a time I thought I had left behind. The past held no significance. He pivoted to confront me, the shimmering surface of the lake flickering in his gaze. "The moment is upon us. In the depths of my gaze, I behold you. Unyielding, radiant, compassionate, and undeniably authentic." Those words were foreign to my ears. Not since my husband took his last breath, not since I had silently locked away the notion of ever being perceived in that light again. "I don't know what to say," I whispered, my voice barely breaking the silence that enveloped us. "No words are necessary," he responded. I had to make sure you understood. The air between us crackled with an unspoken energy, not driven by desire or anticipation, but by a profound and silent intensity that enveloped us. An unfiltered truth. It was a fleeting moment, one that threatened to vanish into the shadows if not seized with urgency. With a deliberate slowness, I extended my hand, letting it hover before finally resting it gently over his. His thumb caressed my skin with a feather-light touch, igniting a spark that sent shivers down my spine. We lingered in that moment, our fingers entwined, as the lake sparkled under the embrace of the late morning sun. A rush of emotions surged through me, a sensation I hadn't experienced in ages, I confessed. My voice trembled with sincerity. "Neither have I," he replied, his voice laced with a hint of mystery. And then we simply sat in silence, the weight of the moment enveloping us. United as one, let the silence linger, unbroken. As the night deepened, shadows danced across the walls, and Alexander found himself ensconced in the quiet of his room, lost in the pages of a book after a simple dinner. Beatrice and I stood together in the dimly lit den, the air thick with unspoken tension. The fire crackled in the stone hearth, its flames dancing wildly and casting flickering shadows that twisted and turned on the walls, creating an atmosphere thick with mystery and anticipation. "I'm so sorry about your husband," Beatrice said, his voice barely above a whisper, laden with empathy. "Though years have slipped by, the weight of grief lingers, timeless and unyielding." "No," I said, a wave of unexpected warmth flooding my chest. "It simply does not. Some days unfold with a quiet ease. For some it creeps in quietly, catching me off guard. With a slow, deliberate nod, he acknowledged the weight of the moment. I too have felt the sting of loss. Several years ago, though we had yet to exchange vows, the depth of our commitment was undeniable. A relentless foe, lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike with devastating force. Swift and merciless. I followed his gaze, my eyes locking onto the same point he was focused on. Hidden beneath his tough facade was a sorrow that whispered in the shadows of his heart, distinct from my own, yet equally heavy in its significance. In that fleeting instant, perhaps it was that very thread that wove our souls together. More than mere attraction, more than mere nostalgia. Yet here were two souls, each bearing the weight of loss, teetering on the edge of despair, questioning if the flicker of feeling could ever ignite within them once more. I rose to my feet, my steps drawing me closer to the window. Outside, the moon loomed low in the sky, its silvery beams slicing through the darkness and dancing upon the water's surface. "Beatrice," I said, my gaze fixed on the glass, the world beyond it fading into a blur. "What are we embarking on?" He approached and took his place beside me, the air thick with unspoken tension. "I don't know," he replied, his voice laced with uncertainty. Yet I refused to mask the emotions that surge within me. Whatever it may be, it exists in undeniable truth. As I turned to him, our gazes locked in a moment that felt electric. A question hung in the air, unhurried and weighty, weaving an invisible thread between us. He leaned in, inch by inch, a deliberate movement that left me with the choice to retreat if I dared. Yet I chose not to. When his lips brushed against mine, it wasn't a symphony of fireworks or the roar of thunder. The air was warm, a gentle caress that invited exploration. A kiss that whispered, "Are you prepared for what comes next? I desire you now." As our lips met, a profound revelation stirred within me, echoing through the depths of my heart. Anticipation coursed through my veins, a palpable energy that ignited my senses. I stood on the precipice, heart racing, fully prepared for what lay ahead. Prepared to awaken your senses once more. Prepared to crack open the sealed door of my heart, even if just a fraction. As we drifted apart, words eluded us, hanging heavy in the air. It was unnecessary. The moment resonated with an unspoken intensity. That night, as I lay in bed, an unsettling calm enveloped me. Guilt was a distant echo, barely a whisper in the shadows of my mind. Or dread, only a flicker of potential. A kind I had long since stopped daring to believe in. As the first light of dawn began to creep into the world, I stirred from my slumber, not from restlessness, but from an insatiable desire to witness the lake bathed in the soft glow of morning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows and bathing the world in a warm, golden glow, an undeniable magic filled the air. The gentle blue mist lingers, a delicate veil before the sun's first rays embrace the world. The silence envelops everything, as if the universe itself has paused, waiting with bated breath. With a blanket cocooning me in warmth, I crept silently onto the back deck, the night air thick with anticipation. The cool air wrapped around her, carrying the subtle scent of pine mingled with the rich aroma of damp earth. Mist curled off the lake's surface, a secret slipping into the embrace of the sky. Suddenly, the haunting sound of the door creaking echoed behind me. Beatrice stood at the edge of the precipice, the wind whipping around him, carrying whispers of the unknown. His heart raced as he peered into the abyss below, a churning darkness that seemed to beckon him closer. Every instinct screamed for him to turn back, yet something deep within urged him forward, into the depths of the mystery that awaited. He remained silent at first, simply stepping closer and offering me a steaming mug of coffee. I accepted it with a subtle nod, the warmth seeping into my hands, a moment suspended in the air between us. His presence enveloped me, a comforting weight that suggested he was meant to be there, beside me. as we shared the stillness of the moment. Sleep eluded me, he confessed. Neither do I. We stood side by side, the blanket draped over my shoulders, its fabric grazing his arm with each whisper of the shifting breeze. In that fleeting instant, an undeniable sanctity enveloped the air, as if time itself held its breath. Silence reigned, devoid of any grand declarations. There was no haste in the air. Two figures emerged, cautiously breaking free from the confines of their own shadows. After an agonizing silence, he finally turned to face me. You haunt my thoughts, an unshakable presence that lingers in every corner of my mind. I gazed into his eyes, probing for even the slightest hint of deceit hidden within his expression. Silence enveloped the scene, a void where presence should have been. I understand this is complicated, I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. Alexander, she remains unaware, and I find myself standing at the edge of the unknown, grappling with the mystery that lies before me. I'm not seeking answers, he replied, his voice steady, yet laced with an unspoken weight. I need to speak my truth to you. I gulped, the rich warmth of the coffee anchoring me in the moment. We've endured too much to waste time on games, I declared. Allow me to speak my truth as well. This sensation is palpable and utterly chilling. Yet there was a warmth that lingered beneath the surface. The word hung in the air, heavy and charged, a silent tension weaving itself into the space between us. Compassionate. It transcended mere thrill or fleeting infatuation. In a world that had long since forgotten the meaning of gentleness, the quest was to uncover a flicker of softness amidst the harshness that surrounded them. That morning, our lips never met. We remained apart. We existed in that moment, undeniably present. And that, in itself, resonated with a depth of intimacy that surpassed any physical connection. But as fate would have it, the silence was destined to shatter. Alexander emerged from the shadows of the town just as the sun reached its zenith, casting a warm glow over the landscape. She exploded through the door, radiating the familiar energy that defined her, arms overflowing with vibrant fruit and the latest weekend whispers. She remained oblivious to the quiet tension that had begun to weave itself between Beatrice and me. Not just yet. Yet I felt the weight of each glance, the tension in every pause, the thrill of every stolen smile. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over the water, the three of us set out on our kayaking adventure. The sun blazed overhead, casting shimmering reflections on the water surface, while Alexander's laughter echoed as she struggled to steer, her usual clumsiness adding a touch of chaos to the scene. Beatrice and I lingered at the rear, our paddles gliding silently through the glassy expanse of the lake, barely leaving a ripple in its tranquil embrace. I've missed this, Alexander called out, his voice echoing through the stillness ahead. We all radiated joy in unison. Beatrice's gaze locked onto mine, a silent intensity hanging in the air. Me too, he whispered, his voice barely breaking the silence. Yet the way he uttered those words held no trace of nostalgia. The moment had arrived. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, Alexander slipped away from the dinner table, his demeanor shifting. He announced his retreat with a weary sigh, citing a headache that seemed to pull him into the depths of night, leaving the laughter and warmth behind. As I stepped forward to lend a hand with the cleanup, Beatrice lingered, his presence a comforting shadow beside me as we dried the dishes together, the warm glow of the kitchen wrapping us in a familiar embrace. Our hands grazed each other, a fleeting touch that sent shivers down my spine. And then it happened again, igniting a spark that lingered in the air between us. "We need to talk," I whispered, my voice barely breaking the silence that hung between us. He nodded, the damp dish towel slipping from his fingers as he leaned back against the counter, a moment of stillness enveloping him. "My heart is tethered to her in ways I can hardly explain. She's my closest confidant," I declared. "If she discovered the truth about what was unfolding between us, it would shatter everything we knew." Beatrice's head dipped in a slow, deliberate nod. "I understand completely, but allow me to pose a question to you." I've gazed upward. What if we chose silence? If we continued to act as though nothing existed in this space, would the pain somehow diminish? Would it render it unreal? I pressed my teeth into my lip, a rush of tension coursing through me. "Absolutely not." He moved closer, the warmth radiating from him, wrapping around me like a cloak. Yet he held back just enough to leave the choice of what happened next lingering in the air between us. "There's no need to hurry," he murmured, his voice steady and calm. "I find myself torn, caught in a web of emotions. I yearn to be open, yet the thought of causing pain to you or her keeps me in the shadows." I nodded, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air between us. "Perhaps we should embrace each moment as it comes, savoring the fleeting essence of now." He smiled, a smile that wrapped around you like a warm blanket, filling you with an undeniable sense of safety. That night, I found myself unable to rest in the confines of my guest room. Yet, I never found rest in his embrace either. We found ourselves once more on the deck, a blanket wrapped around us, gazing up at the stars that twinkled like distant secrets in the night sky. Our shoulders brushed together, and our hands intertwined beneath the fabric, igniting a spark that sent shivers down my spine. A heavy stillness hung in the air, devoid of any sense of urgency. There's no weight bearing down on you. Only solace. A gentle embrace of warmth enveloped the surroundings, igniting a sense of comfort and safety that beckoned one to linger a little longer. A bond forged in silence, its strength palpable without the need for words. In the stillness of the night, I leaned into him, my head finding solace on his shoulder as I surrendered to the darkness, my eyes fluttering shut. "Neither do I," he replied, his voice laced with an unspoken tension. "Yet tonight, I stand resolutely in this moment." The dawn broke, draped in a shimmering cloak of gold. The morning light filtered through the cracks of the deck, casting a warm glow over us. I stirred, the blanket cocooning us in a soft embrace, my head nestled against Beatrice's shoulder, a sense of safety enveloping me. The lake lay still, a mirror of pale glass, the world around it silent, as if it were suspended in time, waiting for the unfolding of the unknown. In that moment, I remained utterly still. I was reluctant to take that step. The steady cadence of his breath wrapped around me like a warm embrace, his arm a protective barrier against the world, while the gentle rustle of the trees whispered secrets overhead. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, a sense of calm enveloped me, and I no longer felt the weight of impending doom lurking in the shadows. A wave of awareness washed over me. At last we rose to a sitting position. He stretched, a warm smile breaking across his face, the kind that lingers in the quiet moments before the world calls us back to its chaos. "I could get used to this," he murmured, a glint of intrigue dancing in his eyes. I remained silent, my fingers stretching out to grasp his hand. Yet, as it inevitably does, reality came knocking at the door, demanding attention. Alexander discovered us on the deck. An hour later, the air thick with anticipation. As she emerged, 2 steaming mugs of coffee in hand, her voice danced with excitement, weaving a tale of a ludicrous squirrel that had boldly invaded the pantry. In that moment she halted, the air thick with anticipation. Her eyes darted to me, a silent acknowledgement of our closeness, as our fingers gradually slipped away from each other, lingering just long enough to be felt. Silence enveloped her, a heavy shroud that spoke volumes in its stillness. Not at that moment. With a silent grace, she passed the mug into my hands and settled down beside us, enveloped in an air of stillness. All morning, silence enveloped us, yet I could sense the shift, a tremor coursing beneath my skin. As the afternoon sun dipped lower in the sky, I felt the weight of inevitability pressing down on me, a force I could no longer evade. I discovered Alexander on the back porch, a solitary figure, legs drawn tightly beneath him. Her eyes were locked onto the trees, yet I could sense her mind wandering far beyond their branches. "May I take a seat?" I inquired. With a subtle nod, she acknowledged the weight of the moment. I sank down beside her, the air thick with an electric tension that hummed like distant thunder. "I should have revealed the truth," I started, "about my connection with Beatrice. I never intended to keep it a secret. Uncertainty hung in the air, a palpable tension that left me questioning everything. The mystery lingers, an enigma that eludes my grasp." Silence enveloped her as she lingered over her tea, her gaze lost in the depths of the forest, where shadows danced and secrets whispered. At last, she spoke the truth that had lingered in the shadows. "He's my brother," she revealed, her voice trembling with the weight of the revelation. "And you are my closest companion." Envisioning the two of you entwined in a world of your own is a curious thought, one that stirs the imagination and beckons the heart. "I understand," I whispered softly. "Trust me." I was just as taken aback. Yet she pressed on, her gaze locking onto mine, a knowing glimmer in her eyes. "I understand what you've endured," she said, her voice steady and unwavering. "The nights have stretched endlessly, a haunting reminder of the solitude that envelops you. Your eyes betray a hidden truth, even beneath the facade of your smile." I fought to hold back the tears that threatened to spill over. "And if someone," she continued, her voice trembling ever so slightly, "if someone is igniting that spark within you, I would never dare to stand in the way of that." I reached for her hand, and to my surprise, she didn't pull away. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice barely escaping my lips, laden with unspoken gratitude. With a sly smirk playing on her lips, she replied, "I'm going to need a little time to wrap my head around this idea." A burst of laughter escaped me, a fleeting, unexpected sound that carried with it a sense of liberation. "That seems reasonable." We lingered in silence for a time, the air thick with unspoken understanding, a comfortable bond enveloping us. It felt as if we had pierced through a hidden layer, emerging on the other side with a raw, unfiltered honesty between us. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the tranquil waters, Beatrice and I embarked on a final stroll by the lake, savoring the fleeting moments before my departure. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden glow that danced upon the surface of the water, igniting it with a fiery brilliance. The path lay shrouded in silence, broken only by the soft crunch of pine needles underfoot and the haunting call of a distant bird echoing through the trees. "I'm not expecting a fairy tale," I murmured, the weight of reality heavy in the air. "I'm not offering one," he said, a sly smile playing on his lips. "Something genuine, something that beckons to be discovered." I faced him, my fingers intertwining with his, I desire that as well. He drew closer, pressing his lips gently against my forehead. It was a kiss that spoke volumes, soft and gentle, filled with warmth and affection. A quiet promise of love that lingered in the air. As the moment arrived to part ways, there were no grand declarations, no theatrical farewells, just an embrace that stretched on, heavy with unspoken words and emotions that hung in the air between us. As I sped away from the lake house, the sky loomed ominously behind me, while the road unfurled before me, silent and inviting. As I reflected on the tumultuous journey that had unfolded, I pondered the essence of loving once more, not with the reckless enthusiasm of youth, but with the profound understanding that comes from having faced the depths of loss. Beatrice's quiet strength lingered in my mind, his presence a steady current that flowed through the chaos, unwavering and resolute, rather than a tumultuous wave crashing against the shore. As I reflected on my own journey, I realized the walls I had built around my heart were slowly starting to crumble. Perhaps, just perhaps, I was on the brink of rediscovering the warmth of connection once more. Not for anyone else, but for myself.